from what I gathered from LinkedIn, like you didn't start off in that role. It was a very different direction, which is what a lot of common. It is common for a lot of folks to enter into the industry back in the day through that medium, and we'll talk about what that is in a bit. But you guys are in for a fun ride. I know a lot of people don't understand what the role of a producer is as well, just because it's not a very common thing across the broader tech ecosystem. So getting to learn some of those nuances will be interesting today as well. So again, welcome Saumya, and great to have you, and thank you for taking out the time. Any quick words that you want to throw out as well before we go live?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on. It's going to be great to sort of get to know everybody and answer your questions, and I hope to give you useful advice that you can actually take away from this talk as much as possible.
Perfect, awesome. Cool. So I think we'll just get started with first, like your career background overall and how you enter into this industry, because I know that's the most interesting, at least when
I don't think so. In fact, I would argue that's probably the least useful topic of all. So I'll try to skip through it really quickly. So I've been working, since 2005, and I started off as a game master on Ragnarok Online. I'm sure the number of people who even remember that game are dwindling, to like infinitesimal amounts at this point. But at that time the industry was so small that it was very hard to sort of get those kinds of opportunities. And I myself I never dreamed that I would work, in a games company at all, let alone, having continued in the industry for, 15, 16 years as I have. So I consider myself extremely fortunate to have done that, and I try to keep myself, humble and grateful on that front as well. Because as much as I know a lot of my colleagues, would have worked even harder than me, and, for some reason or another, they, unfortunately had to leave the industry for better prospects. So yeah, I took on a lot of, different roles, mostly on, community management, customer support, writing, bit of design, all that stuff, bounced around a number of companies, over the many, many years. And I've seen the industry grow and change a lot. And there's so much more opportunity now, so many companies coming up, and we're at a point where, our homegrown Indian studios are themselves, putting out amazing games and getting recognized, more and more on the world stage. So it's really, an amazing time right now. I wish I'd had the kind of opportunities back then as we have now. And, there's so much information available online as well, right? Anyone can learn how to make a game and just start off, even as a hobby, even as your own personal, creative pursuit. So yeah, it's really an amazing, time to be, a games enthusiast or a game making enthusiast. Yeah. As for how I became a producer, like I said, I was, in a bunch of different roles, and but they were always sort of, on the periphery of game making as such. And I always had that, desire to at least contribute more to the actual making of a game. It was solely because someone gave me a chance, because I had been working at EA for a number of years, and, this role sort of opened up on a new project that was coming in, and I spoke to my manager and I said, I would really like to sort of, throw my hat in the ring for this. And, after talking to a number of people, they said, all right, but yeah, I think there's much more, more concrete ways of getting into the industry and into a role like this than the path I took, which was, purely just rolling the dice. And oh my God, thank God a 6 came out this time.
But I think, in all honesty, right, like even today, I see a lot of this pattern where people enter into one aspect of the gaming industry, especially like back in the day, Game Master was a thing like that you started with, right, with a lot of these online games. With a lot of these online communities, like Game Master was like probably the older cousin of what community manager today is, right? Like a lot of the tech companies have hype around these communities and community management and whatnot, right? Like Game Master is the OG version of that, right? Where you're like helping the community.
I was a community manager before social media existed. So that gives you a sense of like, what was
Exactly.
then and what
Right?
is
Like
now.
why do we call it OG, right? Like Facebook was not a thing, right?
Oh
And Google was just getting started and so on and so forth, right? So awesome. So I think a lot of folks just don't understand what a producer is. So if you like sort of share your thought process on what exactly is a producer's role and what is broadly production, which is
yeah.
what a producer sort of focuses on.
Right. So I think a producer's role is fairly interesting in the sense that, we don't work directly on something that goes into the game. Like we don't write code or, create art and assets or, even come up with the ideas or flesh them out. But still, the role of a producer is somehow indispensable for actually getting the game getting the game done. And in a nutshell, if I had to condense it, I would say, that is the responsibility of a producer. You have to take responsibility for getting shit done and making sure it's done. Because the most unfortunate thing is that, it like the role of a producer would not even be required, frankly, if we didn't work with people. Let's be honest here, but because we do, someone has to be there to, be the grease in the wheels, or, maybe the extracellular matrix that sort of holds the body together, and make sure that everyone can do their job in the best way possible, and
Soumya, I think you accidentally hit me.
oh, sorry, I'm not sure why. Yes. So if I'm sorry, I'm not sure how much you folks got of what
No,
I said.
I think we got almost all of it. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, to continue, if that sounds like a very generalized, skill set, then that's because it is, and technically anyone can be a producer. But that is also precisely why it is even more difficult to stand out, in such a role as a good producer. You may be qualified, but so is everybody else. So it's really important to sort of build skills towards this, and in some cases it's tougher to do that, because there's no textbook you can study from, there's no online resource. This is a very experiential kind of role. It's only when you've actually been in it for a good amount of time, you've seen how things function, you've got a sense of how to work with people, how to work with different functions. That's when you can really build up on your skill. But that's not to say that like there's no way to actually prepare for such a role. Of course there is. There are ways to get yourself. There are things that there's some amount of theory that you can get familiar with, but mostly it's sort of a mindset that is a starting point, right? That mindset to take responsibility, the mindset to look not just at what your individual task is, but to look beyond that. What is the entire game process like? What does the entire game team need? Having the intellectual curiosity to at least, seek that knowledge out, is I think super important, because that's, because it is exactly like I said, there's no straightforward path to it. And I think with the games industry at large, it is, I consider it a good thing. You don't need certificates exactly, and degrees and stuff like that. Sure, it helps, it gives you a vast body of knowledge in a condensed amount of time, but you can learn all of that on your own. And as long as you show the skill, you can go far. Yeah, that's, in a nutshell, this is what production is about. And when it comes to, sorry, were you gonna say something?
No, I'm just saying, right? Like production is all about, like you said, right? Get shit done, right? Like basically
Yes.
your job in one line is to make sure that the game ships, it releases, it launches, and if there is something that's potentially blocking it, figure out a way to unblock it, right? Like whatever that is. So,
Yes.
like I've done production in early days in my career as well, and this is like 2012, for a little bit, and I know it's like the janitor's work, right? Like what nobody else wants to do is what you have to do, right? Like if your engineers don't want to deal with the problem from the art team, you have to jump in and figure out why the art team is not able to give the right kind of assets that the programming team is kind of focused on, and they are expecting that our team will deliver, and so on and so forth, right? So you're the sort of the glue that holds this entire shit together. And like you said, right, like if you were not working with people, if games were built with AI and robots, probably a producer is not needed, because it's at the end of the day a very human sort of human connectivity problem, right? Like there's communication gaps, there's misalignments, there are misunderstandings. All those bits and pieces sort of need to be sorted out in order to make that work, right?
Yes.
But how do you think about sort of the skill? Because I totally understand, and I totally 100% agree with the fact that like education is absolutely shit in this department altogether. You focus more on building skills, and that's going to take you to places that you want to be at, right?
Yeah.
So focusing on education and learning experiences that focus on skill building more than just like certificates and nonsense, that's always going to be the way. So 100% agree with you that. But like if you think about like a programmer, right? Programmers have very hard skills, right? Like you're evaluating them on how well they're writing code, how clean is the code, how scalable, bug free, all that stuff, right? So broadly, when I'm hiring programmers, right, I'm thinking about, okay, communications and interpersonal skills important, but if it's a 50-50 for me, at least for me personally, and how I've seen other engineering managers as well, right? If you're failing on the 50% of coding, then how great you are at communication doesn't really matter, because that's a core part of your job, right? And you're failing at that, right? But if you're good at coding and you're bad at communication, that still is a negative in my book, just because you'll cause problems for the team, especially in a remote first environment like now, right? So how do you think about what is the skill map when it comes to sort of when you're evaluating young folks who are looking to become producers, right? Like, how do you think about this kind of a strategic way to position themselves, where to focus on? Because there is a lot of people element to production, right?
Yes, that's an excellent question. And I'm going to try and give the advice that, I wish I had received when I was, looking to enter this role as well. A lot of it is soft skills for sure, but I will also, try and give some concrete advice as well. I think one thing that's really critically important, like I mentioned before, don't just focus on your own field of work. Look at the overall game process. The actual nitty-gritties of how to make a particular game or a particular feature will differ from team to team, game to game, company to company. But at least get a broad sense of what it takes. You start with, say, a concept or an idea. You need to pitch it, get a green light. Then you work on the design. You come up with a spec. Then you need artwork, whatever, characters, backgrounds, environments, rigging, modeling, all of that stuff. Depending on the platform that you're working with, et cetera, you need whatever UI, UX, development, programming, QA, and then release it. If it's a live ops game, then you need, continual, feature updates and monitoring of live issues, looking at data. So really start with getting an understanding of how it functions from beginning to end. It doesn't have to be a really in-depth understanding, like that's not going to happen when you first start out. But the more you start thinking about it and looking at it and trying to absorb that information, the better it is for you. Just from a theoretical perspective, understanding the basics of project management theory, that is currently, widely accepted. You have your basic agile versus waterfall models, what is Scrum. Now, again, managing a project, you will only really build your skills in that once you do it. But, going out of your way to sort of learn that information, synthesize it, be able to talk about it even a little bit. And I'm saying this from the perspective of someone who is just trying to break into the production track, versus someone who maybe has a lot of experience working generally, or has been a team lead or a manager, or, work in project management in a different field and wants to break into gaming. The advice I'm trying to give is someone who is really just starting out, or just wants to switch career tracks like I did, so that's what I would, recommend starting with. A really important skill to develop is yes, your people skills. Most unfortunately, I mean, people tell me that they don't believe this about me, but up until a few years ago, or just before I decided to become a producer, I was practically Gollum. Like, I was completely happy, living in my, being in a little cave with my precious video games, and I didn't really care much to interact with other people. But when I decided, I want to be a producer, I want to get on this career path, I realized, oh, this is just not going to fly. I got to figure out how to be, how to appear like a, like a normal human being who can interact with other human beings.
You have to be an extrovert even if you're an introvert.
Yeah. Yes. And, as hard as it might seem when starting out, and again, for people for whom this is easy, they're probably thinking, what are you talking about? You're teaching me ABC over here. But this is advice for people like me who really, really needed it, So it absolutely is a skill that you can develop, the most important thing with developing any skill is to set your mind that it is important and it is something that you want to learn. It is more difficult than, learning programming or practicing art, because there's no textbook that's going to tell you about this, right? And even if someone wrote a textbook, and many people have, it's really not something you can bank on all that much, So but it is super important, because without that, the role of a producer is so tied into everybody else on your team. It is not an individual contributor role in any sense, so you have to be able to have, good relations with your team members, be able to get work done, at the same time, hold them accountable. Right, when things are slipping, and there will be times when someone needs to be I don't want to say chastised, but at least sort of asked, why is this not happening? This is a consistent problem. When you have to be a bit strict, and you have to be prepared to develop that sense of how to handle that, and that's only going to come through actual experience. If
as part of your role, like, are you also sort of, because you mentioned a little bit about Scrum and Agile philosophies in between as well, right? Like, are you actually the person as a producer responsible for making sure that everybody is following Agile methodologies? You're actually executing the Scrum pipeline correctly, setting up what kind of weekly, bi-weekly sprints are we running, all that stuff, right? Like, does that fundamentally fall within a producer's responsibility? And have you seen that change from organization to organization? Like, different organizations, are they implementing it differently, or it's like a standard pattern that you see across the board?
Yeah, good question. So it depends, like all of that depends from, company to company, sometimes from, game to game within the same, company itself. So yes, sometimes the producers are expected to run, the entire production process from start to finish. That also is something that contributes to the fluidity of the role. It's the expectations are different in different places. Like in some cases, a producer is expected to be more of, someone who holds the creative vision, and ensures that shit gets done in line with the creative vision. Whereas I think more commonly in India, at least in the industry that is currently there, the role is more of a project management thing. So yes, running scrums or running any other production process, again, that is totally dependent on the team and the company, what works for them. I mean, of course, I've not worked in any other industry, but I think processes are a lot more streamlined and quantified in like IT or software generally. But in games, it's just not that way. And I don't think it needs to be also. Really, it's about getting shit done, and as long as things are flowing well, and you're not making a complete mess of things in terms of process, the process exists to serve the people and the product eventually. It's not the other way around. So yes, it's important to know these theories, and it's a very good step up for you if you can execute on a Scrum framework and things like that. But it is just a stepping stone. You need to understand all the methodologies so that you can pull out the best practices from each and use it where required. That has been my experience in games. I'm not really sure about other industries or other companies. Because
there's a lot of overlap. Like the Scrum part is like I think you briefly mentioned in between, right? Like project management, right? these two, I think, are like the closest cousins that get intermixed a lot between production and project management. Some companies have specific product owners for different games that are responsible to do all the project
Yes.
management, whereas producers independently focus on making sure a high quality product gets shipped out and are there to unlock the team at every step of the way, right? From a creative
Yes.
and pipeline perspective, right? But other teams, like you said, they will overlap that responsibility on like one or two individuals, or at least one role, irrespective of the number of individuals in that role. So a producer eventually is doing both product management as well as sort of project management, etc. Right? And they're responsible for not just making sure that the product gets released, but also making sure like the tasks are getting delegated to the right team members, like the next sprint for next 7 days, 14 days, etc. is set up correctly. So I think there is definitely a bit of overlap. It's because I've worked broader in the tech ecosystem and the gaming, right? So
Yeah.
I can relate to the equation in that sense, that I've seen the same thing apply to even non-gaming companies as well, that classically use the sort of the Scrum philosophy as well, right? Um, Josh has a question in the chat. What qualities in terms of sort of educational experiences or professional, prior work experience, etc., that you look for when you are sort of having new folks join your team, right? So what kind of things are you evaluating?
Right. I think it really depends on the level at which they're joining. So, for example, if it's an intern or an assistant producer who is just sort of entering the track, then I think enthusiasm, to learn is one of the key skills. Like I said before, there's no real educational certificate that can guarantee you anything, or that can even mean anything. But it shows it shows that enthusiasm, right? I took the trouble to actually study this thing and learn something from it. So that is definitely a help. But even if you don't have an actual certificate, if you've gone and learned a lot, read a lot, and tried to understand it as best you can, do you know games? By and large, have you done any courses or read any books? But yeah, I think the most important thing is that sort of enthusiasm. But again, like I say, a producer's role is really so experientially dependent that trying to get in at the very bottom without any other experience, without any, if you're in the games industry, then sure, a couple of years in any other role will get you a good, a good boost when trying to switch career tracks. If you're coming in from another industry, then you need to have a good amount of project management experience, because then the main thing that you're learning is the nuances of game development. You're not like nobody's, the sad reality is that the industry itself is so small, the number of jobs available are so small, and the number of applicants are so large that nobody really has the bandwidth to train up someone, from the very bottom, no matter how much they may deserve it. It's quite a sad reality. But yeah, if I'm hiring higher than entry level, then I would look for, what they have done previously, what kind of production responsibilities they have taken on and executed. So for example, like at an entry or early associate level, maybe someone is only responsible for, parts of a feature. So you might have many different, associate producers looking at various parts of a particular game or a particular feature. But, how large was the team that they coordinated with? What have they learned from that experience? How can they explain to me what they have done and what they've taken away from it? Yes, as the rungs go up, you will look for more and more larger areas of responsibility, right? So that's in a nutshell. Yeah. I hope that helps. If you have any more questions, if you have any more clarifications required, please just continue.
Just keep adding it in the chat. I'll keep picking it up. But I think I'll add one thing, right? Like think about, so like Saumya mentioned, right? At the entry level, it's very hard to sort of get in as a producer just because it's such a skill set that gets to a large extent learned over time, right? So think of this way, right? Like if you look at a game jam, right? If anybody has ever participated in a game jam, right? You'll usually have engineers or developers, artists, sound designers, game designers as part of like a game jam team, right? You'll never see a producer on the game jam team, or at least not
Yes.
99% of the time. There's a
Yeah,
reason for
you
it,
don't need
right?
it. You don't need
You
it
don't
either.
need it, right? Like for a lot of these short, bursty projects, right? You're expected to communicate, right, with your core team members quickly and fastly, right? Like so, in order to get into the industry, having some kind of a hard skill, like when we were earlier discussing about the engineering track, having like 50% hard skill engineering, but still 50% strong sort of communication, right? Same with design, same with art, whether it's 2D, 3D, animation, whatever, right? There's a hard skill component to it, right? So the best way to enter into the industry broadly is to pick a track which has a hard skill component to it, because that is something more linearly that you can master and showcase. So imagine this, right? Like for engineers, engineering managers are looking at their portfolio of projects, right? Same for art, same for design, right? How do you really produce a game if you don't have a team, right? Like you need other people to build the game. Your job is to make sure that the game gets done and all the
Yeah.
problems get solved, right? So if you're just at the entry level, just trying to break in, you'll always have better chances of success by showcasing the right kind of hard and soft skills combination. And like it's very evident from even Saumya's journey, and I would encourage you guys to just go check out other producers on LinkedIn and see kind of where they started and how did they enter it. Did they start from a director producer role with a junior producer or whatever the exact title is, doesn't matter. And then how did they sort of mature in their career path? You'll see more often than not, it's kind of similar to Saumya's journey where it started at a different thing, but overall morphed and matured into, okay, did a little bit of community stuff, did a little bit of design stuff, did a little bit of something else, and then eventually landed on production because it needed a culmination of all of these understandings, right, over time. So I think that's probably my way of explaining it, if that makes sense, because I know a lot of the folks in the audience are more engineering aligned. So trying to sort of correlate it to the engineering side might help
Yes.
sort of portray that image.
100%. Absolutely, 100%. That is exactly it. And the more broad your skill set is, the better. If you want to sort of get into a production role, if you're very focused on only one thing, and that is the only thing that you're good at, and you don't look anywhere else, you've got blinkers on, then it's not going to help you, because this is absolutely the kind of role where, you will always be the dumbest person in the room. So yes, that's another, thing that you need to work on. Just be comfortable with that. Be comfortable with that, because you will never be the subject matter expert. Yes, T-shaped skill set, as Peter said, exactly. But you still need to be able to communicate to some degree with everybody. From every other team. You may not know everything about their particular, skill set. But if you know enough to at least talk to them, and again, that will happen when you interact with other people, right? As you get to know them, ask questions about this, that, and the other, you hang out over lunch or whatever, and, you happen to have a conversation about what they're working on, that's how it is. I think if as you say, most people here are engineers. I have fantastic news. I think that people who start off as engineers probably have the best visibility of all. And they have the best starting point if they want to become a producer, but most of them don't, in my experience. I mean, I'm not saying on an individual level anything, I'm not making any predictions, but most engineers that I have interacted with, they're completely happy just doing what they love, and they're like, I don't want to talk to people, I'm happy with code.
I think it's a personality thing, right? Like majority engineers have that sort of personality. Like, let me live with my code, I'm fine, right? I'm happy.
Yes.
But like we were talking about the introvert versus extrovert thing, right? A lot of the programmers, or at least the good, really, really good ones, somehow statistically are just sort of more on the introvert side of the skill set, or sorry, on the spectrum versus on the extrovert side. But if you do happen to figure out once you enter into the industry that you're on the extrovert side, right? Then moving from engineering to design or production, these are best ways for you to sort of explore different aspects of the industry and sort of have a very broad skill set and try new things, right? Because you might get bored of doing engineering for after 7-8 years and then switch into sort of production,
Yes.
and that gives you a new flavor for the next 5-10 years to go, etc. Right? So
Absolutely. In fact, I would say that, you can also look at it in the opposite perspective. And, my example is living proof of that. If you decide that, hey, this looks really interesting, the producer role looks pretty interesting as well. I want to try for it. I think I want to be, communicating with everybody and helping them do their job. You can develop your social skills. It's absolutely possible. It's not, there's, you don't have to be stuck with your vision of what your personality is. It's not strictly, necessary. You can develop it as a skill as well. So don't worry about that. Life is long, career is long. Things will happen and not happen throughout it, and it's fine.
changes.
I see someone saying, sorry, go ahead.
I'm saying change is the only constant, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
no,
sorry,
I was saying someone saying we can discuss code in groups to open up with individuals. No, you can't. Only other engineers care about that. Nobody else.
That's partiality. That's partiality. You're being partial against programmers. You need to make
you
a
can
note of
try.
This. We need to make a note of this, and you need to get non-partial folks from
Most of my friends are engineers, who always discuss code around me. So, but I was the only one who was there in the group. So everybody else was like,
but I as an engineer myself, I favor the GP. Yes, you can please continue to discuss code as much as you want. But in all honesty, that might not land you a production job. And that's just being very transparent. Yeah. But still, I think even for programmers, right, discussing code also is a step up in certain times, right? So a lot of them are like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. Just review my code, give me comments, leave my comments there. I'll read it myself as well. So I don't know why that is, but yeah. Cool, awesome. I think there was one thing I wanted to touch on that which you mentioned in between. I completely I just had it. Okay, let me just pick up your question. Let me come back to that if I capture my train of thought again. What scope and aspects can people from non-engineering background explore at Zynga and other sort of gaming companies in India?
Oh, so many. I mean, in fact, I would say that engineering is just a small, I won't say small, but it's, not, it's not like 90%. In fact, it's more like maybe, 40, 50%, if that much. There is so much scope, apart from art and QA, there's, product management, there's social media management, customer support, production as well. So there's a bunch of ways that, people can get into the games industry. It's not just engineering, there is a game director role as well. Yes. That's the game design side of the career track.
Got it. Oh, I just recalled what my question was. Okay. So one thing that you mentioned earlier on, right? Like hard conversations, right? As a producer, you need to develop the skill of having hard conversations that, hey, this shit is not getting done for the last 3 days. What the hell, right? This was supposed to get done. So having those hard conversations, while that's a skill that you can develop, but as a producer, the tricky aspect is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the people that you're raising question on, right? Some XYZ artist not able to deliver the work on time and the pipeline is getting delayed, right? They're actually not reporting to you, right? They have another reporting manager who's responsible for their performance, maybe like an art lead or an art manager or something, same for engineering. But you as a third party is going in and saying, man, this project is not getting done and you're the fundamental bottleneck, right? So now there's sort of this two-way conflict where this person on the team is thinking, hey, shouldn't this be my manager's responsibility to raise a concern on my performance if there is? And you are not in that hierarchy, but somebody organizationally somewhere separate coming in as part of the team member and raising that concern, right? So how do you sort of navigate this situation? Like what's the general sort of industry practice around these kind of things? Because this is probably, I think, the hardest part. I feel like, it's like hard conversation squared, right? Like it's like next level hard conversation. If you're a manager, going in is very clear, right? Like, hey, I'm your manager, I'm raising the concern, your performance is not good. But somebody else doing it, it gets messy.
No, that is a really excellent question. So it really depends on the culture of the team that you're in. If you're in a high enough leadership role, then, or you're, there in the beginning of the team formation, then you can sort of drive the culture in a positive way towards, people must be like as an employee, everyone, there's a basic expectation that you are responsible for the work that you do and delivering on time, delivering quality, all of that stuff. And if it's not happening for some reason, then yes, your producer, you also have to understand that your producer, that is their responsibility to ask you about it. As a producer, one would expect that baseline level of, understanding from the team member as well, that, they should not have those negative feelings of, oh, why are you questioning me and stuff like that. That's just not how a professional behaves. And if there is a very clear, indication that, like that, hey, this thing is falling behind. Why is that? You as a producer, this is where your people skills come in. You, of course, need to talk to the person. You don't come in there and, point your finger and say, hey, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. And what is this? You talk to them, really try to understand, why is this happening? It's very clear that this is happening. Why is this happening? Is someone else giving you extra work? Are you finding it difficult to, do this thing? Do you, lack a key piece of information? Something is blocking you, so you as a producer, you first find that out, and you unblock them if they are not able to do it themselves. I mean, I'm assuming along with that level of professionalism, includes, trying your best to unblock it yourself. If you cannot, and it's really causing a problem, then your producer can step in and help. If this is a consistent pattern, and addressing it repeatedly with that team member is not helping, for whatever reason, then yes, you can go. In fact, you should go to the person's manager, and at all steps, you should be keeping them informed. If you are not the direct manager, there are some companies where the producer will be the direct manager as well. By and large, I think in India that is not the case. From what my range of experience, but yeah, and at all times, this is where the communication part of it also comes in. You as a producer, you need to keep them informed that, hey, this has been happening. I don't think it's a problem yet, but giving you a heads up. So when it finally is a problem, the person in charge is also aware of it, and if it really is something that the employee cannot solve, the producer cannot solve, that is when you sort of bring them in and step in with some official sort of ways of helping them deal with the problem. But I think the attitude one must adopt is not oh, a mistake is happening, why is it happening? It's not our school teachers whom we all suffered under. We are all a team that is working towards a particular goal together. If there is a problem, we are all ultimately we need to take responsibility, all of us, for trying to solve it as much as possible. And part of that is, my responsibility on the team as a producer is to, keep track of when a particular person is not able to do their thing. And there's nothing wrong or bad or, insulting about doing that. It's just, this is my job and that's your job. And, we all agree that we are all in this together. So, yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
Easier said than done, but that is, the ideal scenario.
Yeah. Generally, I think, what's your sort of broader view on the career trajectory? Because since so many people sort of misunderstand the core aspect of being a producer, right? If somebody wants to jump into that role, right? What kind of a career roadmap can they expect? Because from an engineering perspective, it becomes very clear. You become a senior engineer, a team lead, independent contributor, eventually maybe rise up to like a VP of technology or something, or highest level is everybody knows it's CTO, right? So where does like a production kind of a roadmap lead to from an individual career's perspective?
So it's actually quite similar with production as well. I think when you start out, you handle smaller aspects of the game, and as you gain experience, you handle larger and larger aspects of the game. Starting from, say, maybe an intern, maybe an assistant, to an associate, to a producer, to a senior. as you grow, you might also manage other producers, help them, grow their skill set and things like that. Onto a lead producer, maybe you, oversee the entire game. So you oversee multiple producers, handling various aspects of the game, and you coordinate all of them together. Maybe you have a couple of senior producers under you who are each, depending on how large the game really is. If it's a game jam size, for example, you don't need any of that. If it's a massive game with, huge amount of features and, live ops and, new creations here and there, every month a new feature has to go out and, all of that stuff, then obviously you will have, an appropriately large team that kind of grows with that. Then from a lead, you might go into an exec producer where you are handling, even more, more than one game, and multiple teams under you as well. And really, I think what the actual name is differs from company to company. You can have an exec, you can have a VP of production, you can have, all kinds of things. And of course, at the leadership level, you can also be something like a general manager of an entire studio, if you are so inclined. So again, it depends on, whether you want to take a more project management or operations kind of path, or you want to take a more creative path, or a more business path. I think in this day and age, there is, very much a business role as well. And in some companies, that is in fact the most, important role of all, considered the most important role.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We have a question from Akhilesh on LinkedIn. He's mentioning that he wants to be a producer. He has done a bachelor's in game design and dev, or game design and art. He's been doing a job for 2 years as a designer. But now he's in a dilemma. Should I go after a job as a producer directly, or should I wait? So generally, what's the advice at somebody at his stage who has already done a professional job in design, but eventually wants to become a producer?
Yeah, design is a great way. I mean, actually, all paths can eventually lead into a production track. I mean, there's nothing stopping you, from continuing on the design track and, looking out for opportunities. Like nothing is going to be handed to you and there is no straight path. So, what you need to be doing is, leveling up your skill set. Like I said, pay attention to the entire game production process, not just design. See, talk to people and, by and by try to understand, how things work and all of that. Look for opportunities within the same company that you're in right now. Because, when you're a known quantity, you have a much better shot at saying, hey, I do all this good work and I'm trying my best to learn X, Y, and Z. Is there, a way I can be a producer as well, or can I spend, some X amount of my time shadowing the producer I'd really like to learn? Because if everybody knows you, then it's a much better sell, right? Whereas, if you're trying to get into a new company on the production track, I'm never going to say it's impossible, but it's a lot harder, practically speaking. Right. If you can swing it, then awesome. I mean, I'm not going to say, no, don't try or don't do it or something like that. Of course, try your best. There's nothing stopping you from that. But a much, more likely scenario is if you try to transfer within the company that you're in. And if you really feel like, the company you're in is, has no opportunity whatsoever, and they're never going to, give you whatever, then yeah, look, try and switch to a different one. And, try and grow within that, whether that's, going to a different company and starting from design again, or, trying for a production role. I mean, either one is fine.
Yeah. I think one thing I'll just add is like, if you end up in that situation where your company doesn't have that production role open, like Saumya was suggesting, and you do have to go the route of switching a job, and you are inclined to applying for a production job, right? Showing on your resume and during your interview process, like small things that are aligned with production, which you probably went above and beyond your job to do.
Yes.
And that basically shows your enthusiasm, like what Saumya was mentioning earlier, right? That while your current role for the last 2 years was design, but if there are things, even little things, right, that you did to get the core sort of responsibilities of production going on your team, right? Whether there was a producer or not doesn't matter. whether you were asked to do it or not doesn't matter. What you want to showcase is that you have that commitment and that you are dedicated towards it, right? So I think that's when hiring managers are willing to bet on you, to give that sort of that okay, you might not be already experienced, but you have the passion and the drive to make that happen, and that's when people are willing to bet on you as well. So wish you good luck, and maybe let us know down the road if you do end up switching, and if this question and answer helped or not. Tarun is asking, like, are game directors founders and co-founders of companies?
Oh no, of course not. I mean, not always. Certainly, some folks who are very inclined towards game design, and they want to do their own thing and they want to start their own studio to build the game of their dreams or whatever. They may be founder game directors. But yes, there are plenty of companies. In fact, probably most companies would have creative director or game director as one of the senior leadership roles on the design track.
Yeah. And frankly, if it's a founder doubling up as a game director, for a founder, from a personal experience, there's already so much shit to do that if you have to do a lot of the creative work as well as a producer or a game director, it's just gonna overload you to an degree, and half of the time your team will be waiting on you to make decisions and you'll be stuck. Yes,
in fact, look at Jim Schafer's GDC talk about this very thing. So of Psychonauts fame. So.
Josh has a question. What about people who want to write games and giving concepts in terms of like storytelling, user interaction? How important are they? I think that is a slightly straightforward this one, but what are the possibilities?
Okay, so that would be a part of the game design track.
Correct. Yeah.
If you want to write games, but basically the most common thing that's going to happen is that you're not going to be writing your own ideas. If you want to break into the industry, like I mean, I'm sorry to be so blunt. I feel bad,
are you telling me if I'm a junior and joining a new company under Ubisoft, I'm not going to make my own Assassin's Creed? What? I thought that's what designers do. They come in and write a new version
that
of
is
Assassin's
exactly
Creed.
what designers do. They just walk in with a spec and they're like, "We're going to get this made, and you're going to make $100 million from this idea." The sad reality is that ideas are cheap. Ideas are really, like, everybody has like 10,000 ideas that they're not getting a chance to work on themselves. From the janitor to the actual founder of the company, like everybody. But if you start on the design track, this is assuming that you want to join a company and get a job in an existing studio versus you starting up your own thing, or working on the side and creating your own games as a personal project. By and large, writing itself is probably not going to be like it's not going to be a full-fledged role just by itself, or not a very there's a limit to how much you're going to grow if that is the only thing you stick to. But if you go for a broader design, design track, a game design, as well as writing, as well as this and that and the other, then you will be much better placed to continue.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's a balancing act, right? Like the more narrower you keep your focus, exactly what you need to focus on, but then the number of opportunities also limit out, right? So if you can imagine like a mobile game studio building games, or even like Supercell, etc., right? There isn't much of a story in there, right? So if you're just focused on storytelling aspect alone, then companies like Telltale Games, who focus on heavily story-based games, etc., right? Those become your options, right? But then you have to assess how many such opportunities exist in the industry. Unless you're thinking about, hey, I'm just going to start my own studio and build my own story-based game, then for sure, then there's no limit. You're going your own route. But if you're looking at opportunities in the industry, it's a balancing act, how narrow you go and how focused you are on that, and how many opportunities are there available. So yeah, I think you just kind of balance that out and look at, okay, if interaction design is one thing, what's above it, right? and then UX. Okay, then
Yeah.
what's above it, right? Okay, broader entire design. So you'll have this sort of an umbrella of skill sets, and then you can pick at what level you want to sort of specialize on, right? And you can always start with a more generalistic one, especially when you're new to the industry, and then from there on sort of mature into a more sort of a specialized role. And again, the T skill set is like the golden rule here, right? Awesome. I think this is going to be the last question. I know we are overshooting on time, so my apologies there. Like questions keep coming in.
No problem.
You're just saying, like, is college degree still a restriction when it comes to sort of breaking into like the AAA companies?
I can't say for sure. I don't have a lot of experience. I don't have any experience actually with AAA development. So we can probably do another question. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, Piyush, no. So I can tell you no. Like this is just a blanket answer, right? Like you'll make your way in as long as you're adamant about it and you have the skills to showcase. A lot of companies have already made that transition to hire without looking at your degree, but looking at like your portfolio of projects. And in games, it's even straightforward, right? If you are focusing on a track that has hard skills, you can showcase that through GitHub, through an itch portfolio, or a bunch of other places, video reels, animation. There's a way for you to showcase your work and skills.
Yes.
And degrees are very secondary today. But yeah, so Santosh is asking, I'm a senior modeling artist working for VFX movies. How much time will it take to grasp the game pipeline?
Again, I don't have an art background, so I cannot comment on that. But what I can say is, if you already have senior modeling experience, you can look at companies that are making 3D games and see if they have modeling opportunities open and get an in through that. Be able to explain how your skills. I mean, I don't think you need to explain that much. Also, just maybe explain about your passion for making games and all of that. What is the scope for a sound artist in the game? Sorry, I don't know if we are taking another question.
We can. If you want, we can. That's okay.
Right.
I'm
sound artist in the games, a games industry. Not as much as an engineer or an artist, but there are opportunities. So you can always sort of, contract with games companies. There are rare instances when they want to hire you, full time. If with games industry jobs in general, whether you're trying to break into the industry or switch career tracks or anything, the general advice is just keep looking out for opportunities and grab them when you can. Sometimes you will, sometimes it won't work out, sometimes it just might. That's the reality of life in general. Nothing is guaranteed. Just from a very practical perspective, nothing is guaranteed, but you can still make your own way, and it's okay. I think that don't get too caught up in the idea of, no, I want to work in the games industry only. Not as a start. I mean, it's a good starting point, but the focus on, the joy of making games for yourself. Think of it as, a creative pursuit, like, oh, you love, sculpting or making music or something like that. Can you make a career out of it? Sure, maybe. Why not? Try your best. But if not, you still love what you do on the side, and that's perfectly fine. Just practically speaking.
I think specifically for like Ranjit's question around sound, I think, and like just talking from a geographical perspective, in India, definitely the scope for a more specialized role like that one is very limited, right? But you can look at remote opportunities as well as a lot more of international opportunities. But in order to sort of break into some of more international opportunities, you need more experience, right? So it's again, like my previous answer, right? It's a balancing act. The deeper in the specialization hierarchy you go, the better your chances of pinpointing your skill to a specific requirement, but then the number of requirements also reduce, right? So I know back from my US time, there are ample studios that have dedicated audio engineers, right? Who are just focusing on implementing sound in the game, right? And building tools for sound designers to incorporate their games, right? But these are typically your AAA budget titles, right? So if you have the opportunity to work with those kind of teams, you will have those opportunities. But if you look at the larger ecosystem of opportunities, the scope is usually sort of slightly less there. But yeah, awesome. So I think we're at the 6 o'clock mark. I know we overshot, so my
Oops.
apologies there, Saumya. But I think the questions kept in coming, so we just went on a roll there. So thanks again for joining in. This was very helpful, demystifying the overall sort of production track and the kind of
Yeah, no
BS that
problem.
comes with it as well.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yes.
hopefully folks learned a little bit in terms of what production is really about, and maybe it left them more confused. Who knows, right? So
Yes,
one way
it
or
is
the
very
other,
confusing.
yeah, one way or the other, if it piqued their interest, hopefully we have done our job. But yeah, thank you again for joining in and taking out the time, and really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll post you again in some time down the road as
Yes,
well.
happy to do it.
So
And please, if there are any
perfect.
more questions, you can always pass them on. I'll do my best to answer, if I
Perfect.
can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So guys, in the Discord and events chat, just feel free to drop in any questions and for Saumya, and I'll try to collect them and pass it on email and share them back to Discord once I get those as well. So perfect. Awesome. So thanks again for taking all these questions and answering all those candid stuff as well. Hopefully folks enjoyed it as well, and we'll catch up again sometime. Thanks, Saumya.
Thank you so much.
All
It
right.
was really fun.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. All right. Thanks, guys, for joining in. I think we'll just wrap up. And Piyush has shared Saumya's LinkedIn as well. So feel free to check it out, take a look at her past experiences, like we were discussing, and so on and so forth. Overall, hopefully, you guys learned something, got exposure to something new. And if there's any feedback from today's session or any other sessions in the past, please always use the event chat and tag me and Piyush about the feedback that you might have. Happy to sort of take that in to understand what kind of more sessions we should hold for the community at large as well. Okay, perfect. So thanks everyone for joining in, and I'll see you guys back in Discord. Right, take care. Bye, guys.